Welcome to your Week 3 announcements, TE 873. Well, the first thing to do this week is to check the written announcements for the winners of the crossword puzzle. Now, those of you who won, your prizes are on the way. And I bet some of you are wondering what those prizes are going to be. Well, the prize this time is a DQ gift certificate. Yay! Sometimes I send things like these nifty wristbands that says library in lots of languages, or sometimes bookmarks. So you never know what I'm going to send. Those of you who haven't done the puzzle yet, you still have time until Sunday to complete it and get the extra credit. For the first module this week, or the resources part, we begin what Readling terms the nuts and bolts of our textbook, and of reference service in general, really. Librarians just need to know this stuff in order to best serve our patrons. If we don't, who will? We'll be looking in depth at many types of reference sources, covering 2 or more basic types each week for the next 3 weeks. You'll be evaluating 2 reference sources, one for each chapter each week. This week we're covering chapters 3 and 4. In your posting, please, first, use the evaluation criteria from the text to evaluate each source. This is different for each chapter or each type of source, so be sure to look in the book for that criteria. The evaluation criteria is usually featured in a handy-dandy table in the book. And the second thing to do is to describe how useful you think this reference source would be for students and how they would use it at your school library. Be sure to use quotes and paraphrases from the text and the sources to support your posting and cite them as you usually do. Because reviewing a variety of sources is in the best interest of all students in this class, only 2 persons may cover the same reference source on the discussion board within your group. So be sure to check what's been covered before you post. Also, be sure to include the titles of your sources in your heading to make it easy for the other members of your group to check. A word about finding resources. I'm supposing that some of you are getting your reference sources from your own school libraries, but others are going to public libraries or other libraries to get them. Of course, there's great resources on the internet as well, and those are certainly usable. One tip is to use the databases and reference sources that are supplied by the Calvin T. Ryan Library on the UNK campus. Of course, you can access this on the internet. Check the written announcements for directions on how to access these sources. Another good source if you live in Nebraska is Nebraska Access, and I have that web address in the written announcements. Now, other states have resources like this too, and really there's a plethora, a treasure trove of information on these state-supported websites. Public libraries also often have wonderful free databases and access to online reference sources. By the way, if you find a reference source that you think would fit the topic of the week and it's not listed in the text, go ahead and review it. Now, a word about thoroughness. I'm looking for thoroughness in your postings about the reference sources you're evaluating. Please answer each of the questions and cover all of the areas mentioned in the Readling tables as a point of criteria for that type of source. I'm also looking for quotes and paraphrases from the source itself and the textbook that support your points. Remember, you're being the eyes and the ears for the rest of the class, and they're doing this for you also. Good coverage should make your reference resources purchase proposal project, say that 3 times fast, due July 17th that much easier. Besides, it's a pain to go back and find the information you're missing, so it's a good idea to get everything you need the first time. Now, for the second module this week, or services, we begin a 2-week series of discussion and projects on understanding and responding to patrons' questions. We've alluded to this during the whole semester. This may seem simple at first blush, but believe me, it isn't. Having worked the reference desk for adults, for children, and teens in public as well as school libraries, I can provide many tales of reference interviews that I handled well, and others I just plain didn't. For instance, some people come in asking for a particular resource like, hey, I need a dictionary, when their question really doesn't have anything to do with looking up definitions. Others have only a vague idea of what their question is, let alone how to answer it. This week, we begin to unwrap this art, science, skill, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most important things we can learn as librarians, and we need to master it. You'll be reading about the art of questioning and will be performing a reference interview yourself this week. I've left you some choices on how to do the interview, so take a look at those and choose what works best for you. Now, you might take a look ahead at the reference interview project, which is due July 3rd. You'll be making an observation and taking part in a reference interaction with another librarian. Now, take a look at the requirements and project description, and as always, let me know if you have a question. Now, for this particular project, you'll need to be incognito. So I brought a disguise in case you need some ideas. Aha! Now, I never know if I'm Jake or Elwood in this costume. You'll probably come up with your own way to be incognito for the project. And speaking of projects, you'll notice that the projects for this class are timed more toward the end of the session. Now, I worked and worked and worked and tried to make this just right. But the information is cumulative, and you'll want to have specific knowledge before you do the projects, thus the timing toward the end of the class. Now, I tell you this now so you can plan your time accordingly. But whatever you do, I don't advise that you skip ahead and do the projects before you do the weekly discussions. The discussions are designed to help you prepare for the projects. Again, the operative phrase is the information and knowledge accumulates. Then you apply it in the projects. Enough said. Enjoy the journey and have a great week.